Attempts to unseat Tinubu can destroy Nigerians' unity, Shehu Sani. Hello viewers and welcome to InfoGist TV. The former Kaduna lawmaker Senator Shehu Sani has warned northern leaders to shelve their plans to unseat President Bola Ahmed Tinubu from office. He said a move could destroy the country's unity. Sani issued this warning in an interview with our newsman. The former lawmaker urged northern leaders to plug into the policies and programs of Tinubu's administration that would benefit the northern part of Nigeria instead of trying to gain more political power. Senator Sani said there is evidence of rallying of forces, regrouping of forces, political forces from the north, trying to use former President Buhari as a rallying point to evict the government of Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu, and they hope to resurrect his political chance in the House of the masses and portray the government as one that has been undermining the North and one that has not been living up to its campaign promises to the region, being that it has the highest votes from them. And I must warn that attempt to do that can create a serious problem for our country. Buhari was in power for 8 years, and there has never been any serious southerner that challenged his own government in terms of trying to remove him from office. And secondly, we should know that before you think of power, we should think of the whole country. We should be thinking of a united country, a peaceful country. Nigeria is still a fragile nation. What will happen if southern politicians decide to also form the idea of uniting themselves and making a position that is their stand? There will be no Nigeria. So, they should, in the interest of the unity of the country and the future of the country, sacrifice their personal ambition at least for 2027, and the North will have the moral right to ask for power after the second term of this administration. This desperation for power will not go well for the region, for the unity and collective peace of our country as a nation, he added. Also, Sani emphasized the need for northern leaders to address the problems faced in their region. We should recall that northern Nigeria has been grappling with insecurity and poverty amongst other problems, he said. Shehu Sani also said that it is a historical fact that people from the north have been in a political power for a longer time, and that power was an opportunity for them to use to develop the region, to address the problems of insecurity, of education, of underdevelopment, and of widening gap between the rich and the poor. But unfortunately, that power that ought to have been used that way was misused. It, which is the North region, is ahead in poverty index, lags behind in the industry, and in many aspects of development. It is a serious concern because part of the problems we are facing in the North today can be rooted in a history of bad governance, a history of corruption, a history of insensitive leaders, and a history of people who ought to have used power to develop their own part of the country, which they have not been able to do. So, power has not been of use to northern Nigeria for the period it has lasted. For the fact that the North has been behind in a number of indices of development, there should have been a concerned and concerted effort in terms of bringing development to that part of the country. But look at what we are having now in the last 8 years before the coming of this administration. In 2015, there was so much hope. There was so much belief and faith that the leadership that took over at that time would address the fundamental issues, but it was not. So power should be of use to the masses. In the North, power should address their poverty and insecurity. It should address the issues of development and not be used to enrich an insignificant few who simply are parasitic on the economy of the country. Meanwhile, Shehu Sani said the Tinubu administration should implement restructuring, adding that it would be a systematic opportunity for Nigerians to address the problems of underdevelopment. He added that it would enable the North to come back home and see what it can do with its resources to address the problems that it is facing for more than a decade or two. So, I think it is an opportunity to give them all the necessary support at this time to address these problems of insecurity because the North suffers more than any other region. The North constitutes about 70% of Nigerians' landmass and also makes up most of the Nigerians' population as it is more populated than the South. All that should have been in and should have been that when people from the North have the opportunity to be in power, they should prioritize areas in which there should be an intervention. It is not simply appointing Northerners to office, but addressing problems which the North is facing, Shehu Sani states. Meanwhile, former President Obasanjo must be vigilant to play his role. Senator Sani also recounted his experience with former President Olusegun Obasanjo at Kirikiri prison in 1995. Shehu, who noted that he protected Olusegun Obasanjo from being attacked by inmates of Kirikiri prison, said he told Obasanjo that he was a commander outside, whereas he, Shehu Sani, was a commander in prison. He spoke in Abuja at the second edition of this Nigeria's lecture and award event themed 25 years of unbroken democracy, challenges, prospects and possibilities. According to him, in 1995, a team of soldiers, policemen and DSS visited his house in Kaduna. It was a journey that began and lasted 4 years, he said. I was picked up from Kaduna and brought to Lagos with the late General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua from the airport. We were led to the DSS headquarters where we met President Olusegun Obasanjo. Unfairly from the soldiers, they handcuffed me but did not do so for Obasanjo or Yar'Adua. Obasanjo looked at me and asked me who I was and if I had stolen something for them to have handcuffed me. I told him I was an activist. I was then the deputy chairman of the Campaign for Democracy. We were taken to Kirikiri Maximum Prison. We stayed there without anybody saying anything to us. When we arrived at Kirikiri, we were given a blanket and a plate of food. We were then allocated our cells. When the armed robbers there saw Obasanjo, they started shouting and insulting him. Naturally, for those of us who were human rights activists, we were popular with inmates. I told him, "You are a commander outside, but this is where I command." I then talked to the inmates to calm down that no matter their grievances with Obasanjo, he was now an inmate. I got 15 years. Obasanjo got 15 years. Yar'Adua got life imprisonment. Those of us from the north were sent to southern prisons, and those from the south were sent to the northern prisons. That was how I found myself in Port Harcourt prison. I was in Port Harcourt prison when Ken Saro Wiwa was brought in and hanged. I could see them from the window, he stated.